Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Live Chat with James, coming to you from the ProPix TV studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Big news coming out of Canada is that in light of the DOGE breaches in the United States of the Treasury Department, among other government databases, it actually is in contravention to various acts, laws, and tax treaties, not only between Canada and the United States, but also involving citizens and corporations around the world. Different countries have tax treaties and agreements that are in agreement of the United States laws, the Privacy Act of 1974, among other data protections and privacy protections that are afforded to foreign nationals who participate in the benefits of the tax treaties. Now, many companies that have U.S.-based income, investments, or other business entities or operations are subject to various taxation laws. Now, this also goes for Canadians who may hold property, real property, or otherwise in the United States, investment properties, investment tools and assets, as well as income, among other financial benefits. Now, what happens is that through the tax treaty, and we're going to speak specifically about the U.S.-Canada tax treaty, but there are tax treaties with other countries as well. And that information is taken in by the U.S. Treasury, the IRS, among other government agencies. Now, that stores personal data on individuals and corporations. That information is financial, it is personal, it is social insurance numbers, tax filing numbers, regulatory filings, and so much more. And this information, under law and under the conventions in which they are enacted, they are to be protected at a very high level by all governments. Now, this system prevents the double taxation of income, assets, and gains that are made in participating countries. So, an example is that there may be an individual who makes a certain level of income in Canada, but is a resident of the United States or citizen of the United States. They would file a W-8 form or other taxation forms that would allow them to pay a single entity tax. So they are paying tax in Canada or they are paying tax in the U.S. They are not being taxed on both sides. And that is why the information is collected and shared between the U.S. and the Canadian revenue agencies and the related governments. Now, under the Act, under the treaty, and under the convention, that information is solely for the purpose of income reporting and tax reporting and payment of taxes on that income. Now, of course, we know that the U.S. government and likely, and reciprocally, I should say, the Canadian government hold on to that personal data. That includes social insurance numbers, or in the U.S., for U.S. citizens, the social security numbers, as well as personal data information, income, and as I said earlier, reporting information. Now, this is of a major concern when it gets into the hand of DOGE. Now, of course, we don't know who's paying these technical people, these software engineers and others, and what they are doing with the information that they're extrapolating from the U.S. databases. Very simply put, though, they could use it to influence if an individual has certain investments, they could target those investments to impact certain Canadians. They can use that information to gain access to private or proprietary details about a Canadian company doing business in the U.S. and therefore trade secrets that they could be taking and selling off to other corporations and basically corporate espionage, or they could be utilizing that information themselves to benefit Starlink, to benefit Neuralink, to benefit SpaceX, to benefit Twitter, and so forth. If you think that the data breaches that Facebook faced lawsuits over was huge. This makes that look minuscule because of the type of data that is now breached in those systems. The data that Elon Musk, the DOGE, and whoever else is involved actually has access to and is possibly sharing. We don't know what they're doing with this data. Now, of course, this, again, as I said, is not just isolated to a Canadian and US tax treaty. There are many other nations around the world that have a tax treaty with the US, and therefore that corporate or those individuals have just had their personal information and their personal data completely accessed and breached. This is a very big concern, or it should be, to any Canadian that has any filings or business dealings in the United States of America. This should also be a major concern to international governments, as it could impact the corporations that are based within their borders, and it could have an impact of the free flow of trade. They are gaining information on not only American citizens and American corporations, but worldwide entities, and this is a major concern that needs to be addressed. I know that, for example, there has been a report filed with the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service. There is a criminal complaint that's been filed with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Federal Investigations Division, and I'm sure that there are going to be more complaints and more criminal filings. This should be acted upon by the Canadian government, by the respected law enforcement agencies, by the Privy Council of Canada, the Privacy Commissioner, among many others. I would strongly suggest that if you are doing business in the U.S. or as a corporation or as an individual who files W-8s or any type of tax returns there, that you look into filing a complaint with local law enforcement in your jurisdiction or through the federal office of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, as well as CSIS, as you should be very concerned about your data has now been breached and put in the hands of Elon Musk, the DOGE team, and who knows who else. Now, this again is in contravention of the Convention of the Tax Treaty laws, as well as the Privacy Act of 1974, among many other regulatory infractions that this has impact on. Now, I also have it that there is several companies looking at launching a class action civil suit against Elon Musk, against Twitter, against SpaceX, against all of his entities, because he is in fact a paid employee of all of those entities that he owns or is a major stockholder in. He is therefore representing them while he is also breaching the data of American, Canadians, and others around the world. This is a major concern. He is not an elected official. He is not an official put in place for the purpose as representative of the United States government. He is a private contractor representing some DOGE organization that really we don't know much about, because we don't see any type of filings or registration of DOGE as an actual corporate entity, government agency, or any type of non-profit agency. So where exactly this responsibility lies definitely falls back to Elon Musk, to Donald Trump, to the U.S. government, as well as all companies that Elon Musk is taking revenue from or income from. And what needs to be investigated further are the software engineers who are working with DOGE and going forward and accessing these databases and locking some up and accessing all the personal information of the people in the databases. This is a major international event that's taking place, and although the mainstream media and most of the public has been looking at it as an American issue, it is actually an international issue that needs to be investigated at the highest levels of every company, of every government, of every law enforcement agency representative of a cooperative tax agreement or tax treaty nation. This is a very big concern, much bigger than what the U.S. would have you believe, but it has far-reaching international implications. This is, again, a big concern because they have shared databases with Canada, with other nations, and now through proxy, the Elon Musk DOGE team has taken control of those systems. That gives them all of the access that breach the data of all of these people who have information on those systems. And let's go even a step further, is that some of them may not even be U.S. citizens. They may be there on working visas. They may be there as employees of SpaceX or other entities that are owned and controlled by Elon Musk. We need to know who is signing their paychecks so we know who they're working for, because they are not on the payroll of the federal government of the United States of America. Therefore, we need to know why they are accessing that information and what information now is being shared within his companies, within his AI programs. And let's take a look at that as well, because you can look at companies such as OpenAI. You can look at Google AI. You can look at Meta AI and any others. Now, they are scrambling to keep up with the demand for information by these systems that are, whether it's deep learning or other systems that are learning through input of data. Any data that they are utilizing to train those systems benefits them and creates a massive profit to them as they advance the AI algorithms. Now, if Elon Musk and his engineers are taking that information and feeding it in to train their AI systems, this is even bigger than what we expected or what people can even comprehend at this point, because most people don't understand how the AI systems are trained and how these supercomputers are just eating up that information. It is a major breach, and it is something that needs to be looked at from an international community, not just a U.S. national investigation. There may be implications there for civil suits, as I said, to the billions, if not trillions of dollars when you take into account the number of international citizens that could be impacted by this data breach. It, again, is a very serious and lingering question on what the hell is going on in Washington, D.C. Now, through the immunity that Donald Trump is protected in the United States against activities, and whether it is law enforcement or whether it is civil litigation, he is not afforded those same protections outside the borders of the United States of America. There are some legal loopholes and some immunity that he may experience or be allowed to flex. But at the end of the day, he is breaching international laws and the laws and agreements that the United States has held very tightly and cherished for decades, if not over a century. This is, again, a major alarm going off that the breach of information and data by Musk, by DOGE, and even these kids that are working on behalf of Musk and the DOGE agency. One of them, for example, is apparently, according to a Wired magazine article, one of them is a Canadian, 19 years old, there in the States. He is a recent, I believe, high school graduate at the age of 19, who did an internship with one of Elon Musk's companies. He is now working as a software engineer. Now, as far as I'm concerned or aware, the certain working visas do not give them a wide scope so that they can work and investigate the U.S. government agencies. They should not, as foreign citizens, have access to that data, let alone be given free rein on it. Now, this individual I'm referring to, according to the Wired magazine, this guy is handled online and he goes by the name of Big Balls. This is who you are trusting your data, your sensitive, your personal information to, a guy that goes by the name of Big Balls. Yes, you heard that right. Now, let's get real here, folks. The RCMP in Canada, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, has the complaints. They need to act on them accordingly and expeditiously to prevent any further dissemination of the data and the potential, given the links between Elon Musk and other foreign leaders. Where is this financial and personal data going? Is it being used to train his AI systems? Is he trading it off to foreign governments for their use and their purposes for any type of financial espionage or sabotage? We don't know. And that should be, as I said, of great concern to the entire world, not just the United States. Now, if you're just tuning in, I suggest you watch the replay of this later and really catch the conversation that we've been having, or what I've been giving you in terms of these details. Because once again, the DOGE access to the Treasury and other U.S.-based information sources is a breach of international conventions and international tax treaties. And that could be a major problem for the United States, for the current administration, and for anybody that has investments or any type of interest in Elon Musk operated companies. This is, in a sense, could be corporate espionage, it could be theft of data, it could be much more. He may be authorized to, by the government and the President of the United States, to look at and to gather unlimited scopes of information on American citizens and American companies in which he may be a competitor. But at the same time, there are international laws and agreements in place that protect foreign citizens and their data, and that seems to be breached as well. Elon Musk is taking control of this data, and it is a scary thought. Now, let's move on to other subjects, because you know what? We can only go so far on that one tonight. But in closing on that subject, yes, CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, has received a complaint about the breach, as well as the federal level of the the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have also received a filing and a complaint in a criminal capacity against Elon Musk, against DOGE, and this whole process. So again, watch closely, and if you are outside of the United States and subject to the W-8 program, or your corporation and or even small business has any dealings in the U.S., then you may want to contact law enforcement and file a complaint of your own, because your data may have been breached, or definitely has been breached through that system. If you are an online reseller of anything, or an online retailer, if you are a YouTuber, if you are an influencer, all of these things, if you're outside of the United States of America and filled out a W-8 because of your U.S.-based commissions, your U.S.-based sales, your U.S.-based investments, property holdings, and again, celebrities, superstars, whether it is musicians or actors, are subject to various royalty payments that may be subject to the tax treaty, and therefore their personal information is in those databases. Amazing athletes, like professional athletes, their information, because they have income, they may be U.S. citizens that are working in Canada, or Canadians working in the U.S. for sports teams. Again, they are subject to these tax treaties, and therefore their information may have been compromised as well. And with DOGE, again, getting access to the U.S. Treasury Department systems, you're screwed, because your information is no longer secured. It has now been breached, and that needs to be investigated and acted upon at the federal level of every country that has a tax treaty with the United States of America. With that said, let's go on to other subjects. Here in Vancouver, people are digging out still from the snow. It is not at a level that they've seen in other parts of Canada and the U.S., but it is definitely a lot of snow, some places up to a foot or 2 feet of snow in the last 48 hours, and they are digging out. In other regions of British Columbia, of course, there's been much more snow and cold temperatures. For Vancouver, Vancouver at this time of year. It's not generally too cold. It's a few degrees below zero, but it's not that bad. However, right now we are seeing an Arctic outflow that has brought temperatures with a wind chill feeling like minus 20 degrees Celsius overnight. So it is cold for lower mainland Vancouver standards, and yet it still looks beautiful out there with all of that snow. It has been cleared off the highways fairly well. It did take a bit of time to get off the number one federal highway for the snow clearing because there were trucks spun out, and I'm talking tractor trailers that were spun out on small hills on the highway, and yet a lot of them are heading out of the lower mainland, which means they were heading into the mountains. So if they couldn't make it out of the lower mainland, that is concerning that they are heading into the mountains. And of course, hopefully they use their chains and practice putting them on and taking them off. It is a skill in itself, and all truckers will tell you it is a pain in the ass to have to chain up to go up the mountains and make it through, but it is one of the necessary safety steps that are taken as a professional driver. Welcome Fran, welcome Jen, welcome Lynn, Eddie, Renee, Graham Granger 8, Slav Prince, Villa Lifestyle, Lisa, Samantha, everybody, welcome to the conversation. If you have something that you would like to talk about, by all means, this is the place to be. If you have a topic that you want to chat about, it doesn't have to be politics, it doesn't have to be news, it can be anything that you want to talk about. We can talk about entertainment, we can talk about filming, the filming industry in Vancouver or Canada, or even in parts of the US, where of course the film industry is suffering right now, given the lack of productions going on, the different trade battles that are going on has impacted the entertainment industry as well. So filming of television and motion pictures has slowed down in both Canada and the US. Markets, of course, in the Los Angeles region have slowed down even further, given the recent wildfire situation there has definitely impacted the ability to film there, and definitely impacted a lot of the people who make their living within the film and entertainment industry. Things that are also adding to the slowdown of the film industry here in Canada. Of course, we know that the Canadian dollar being lower usually attracts a lot of productions, but there are several states that are getting very aggressive in their tax credits for US-based productions. So again, that plays into it. Canada does have very generous benefits to the film industry and tax credits as well. But when you couple into that the looming trade tariffs, among other things, we don't know where it goes, and that again has created a lot of instability and uncertainty in a lot of different industries, markets, and business practices. And that is no different in the film and television industry. It has had a major impact on Canadian productions, because let's keep in mind that if you're unaware, a lot of the Canadian productions are actually based and run from US studios. A lot of Sony, a lot of NBC, Netflix, just all of the different services, whether it's traditional network television, whether it is specialty cable channels or the new streaming platforms. A lot of those productions are done in Canada, and again, with the cutbacks of the streaming services on their productions, the reduced budgets of the main television networks like NBC, ABC, Disney, so forth. That has a direct impact on the filming budgets, and again, the number of productions that are going on at any given time. Once again, with trade tariff talks and that threat looming, it again could delay the kickstart of the film industry in Canada for another 30 days, as the removal or the pause on the tariffs are only temporary. Looking at that, it is again impacting the Canadian economy by billions of dollars a year. Between Toronto and Vancouver as major film hubs, there's also been a surge in productions in the Prairie provinces, in the Maritimes, and even up north in the Northwest Territories and the Yukon. So all of these communities, their film projects are slow. They are lower budget if they are coming in at all. So again, all of those local economies have been hit hard by the threat of tariffs alone, let alone tariffs, but just the threat themselves have delayed a lot of film and television productions. That is the reality of our world right now. There's chaos everywhere, but at the same time, hopefully things can get resolved and we can get back to filming for television and motion pictures as we were last year. But again, last year was even quieter in terms of the normal budgets and the normal revenue that's created by the film, television, and entertainment industry. And that is just the way it is now, and it needs to change, but it's not going to change anytime soon, especially as I said, with the threat of tariffs still looming there. In terms of other news, what can we report about? How about the fact that 205 Indian nationals were returned to India? They expect to arrive in the state of Amritsar later today, sometime this afternoon. They will arrive there in India. 205 individuals that were flown out of the U.S. They were illegally in the United States and have been deported to India. Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has agreed to take up to 18,000 to repatriate into India and to assist with that process, which seems like a large number, but at the end of the day, there are an estimated 220,000, give or take, illegal immigrants in the U.S. from India, and of course, to round them all up and just send them all back to India wouldn't be realistic, but at least there is that process. And the unfortunate downside of it is how many people are getting caught up in these ICE and immigration sweeps across the U.S. When it comes to just working class people who have been paying taxes, paying into the system, and are actually benefiting the U.S. economy through that. There are so many people that are getting deported that are not criminals in terms of not having any criminal record, no criminal charges, let alone convictions. And that's contrary to the original announcements by ICE, the Department of Homeland Security, and other agencies that they were going to target the worst of the violent criminals and repeat offenders in the initial sweeps to get rid of that criminality by those who are illegally in the United States. So they seem to have diverted from that, and now it's more blanket arrests and deportations without the benefit of the appeal system. It is no longer a day where illegal migrants can drag out the appeal system for months, if not years. So that is a big change. But again, even some of the politicians in India have reached out to their counterparts in the United States with concerns, of course, that they are rounding up some people who should not have been so readily or quickly deported because they have no criminality involvement whatsoever. Just the fact, some people do argue the point that just in being in the U.S. illegally, of course, that is a criminal activity. So, there is arguments to be had on both sides. But let's take a look into something even more interesting, is the reopening of Guantanamo Bay. And the fact that Donald Trump is looking to send the illegal immigrants who are dangerous offenders or repeat offenders, that he has concerns that their home nations will not keep them there, that they will be able to try to re-enter the U.S. upon that deportation. So again, the revolving door of the criminal element being deported back to their home country and then coming back to the U.S., maybe using using fraudulent passports, different names, different identities, and a lot of them slip through. So this is a concern, of course, but at the same time, to open Guantanamo Bay for these individuals, to lock them up, and some potentially indefinitely, is a concern. There are human rights conditions that have to be addressed. There are human rights issues. There are the different policies, procedures, and such of international law. And of course, by pulling out of the United Nations Human Rights Council, that again is going to allow the U.S. to circumvent and get around some of the human rights issues that could be brought up on the mass deportations. And to take it even a step further, the Secretary of State was recently in Central America and talking to a lot of world leaders in areas such as El Salvador, Venezuela, Colombia, so forth. And they have been looking to actually outsource the prison system into other countries. So this is not specifically to do with immigrants or illegal migrants that are in the U.S. and have broken the law. They're actually looking to ship U.S. citizens who have broken laws down to third world countries in order to have those countries incarcerate them and take responsibility for their prison system. And this should be another concern, because not only are you breaking the rights and the human rights issues, but you're also breaking U.S. law in the fact that you are now subjecting to inhumane and uninhabitable situations in many of these prisons. They're overcrowded, they're decaying, they're falling apart. They are, they are places that are cesspools full of disease. It is one thing to basically, as I describe it, to warehouse criminals and to have a system built on retribution, when really the system is supposed to be about rehabilitation. It's supposed to take a balance between punishment and rehabilitation. And by shipping your criminal element out of the U.S. prisons and into prisons in Venezuela or other third world countries is definitely not in the best interest of the United States of America. It is not in line with the International Convention for the Prisoners. It is not under the mandate and the rights of prisoners through U.S. and state laws. So again, that should be of huge concern. Now, on the other side, these countries such as Venezuela and such that are looking to accept U.S. prisoners into their justice system and into their prisons look at it as a benefit to both sides. They see it as a way for the United States to save money on incarceration while they are paying these other federal entities and foreign governments to house the prisoners at a much cheaper cost than what is being spent in the U.S. on incarceration. So again, the U.S. saves massive amounts of money, which goes a lot further in these other nations. Now, when you look at the human rights abuses within these prison systems, you look at the atrocities that happen there, the constant riots and upheavals, and the corruption. I mean, it is a recipe for disaster. Now, you may be looking at how it is going to save the American taxpayer to ship your criminals to third world countries, but I guarantee that when the time comes that these lawsuits start coming in from prisoners who have been shipped, from families of prisoners who have been shipped to these third world nations, you are not only taking them out of the country, you are separating them from their loved ones who are a vital support system for those who are not continuing to commit crimes upon release. The recidivism rate is high already, but when you take into account that you have now separated people from their support systems and the motivation to actually do better when they are inside to make their life better on the outside, now shipping them to these third world countries are going to bring back angry, bitter, and violent individuals. And if you think that these individuals are going to be locked up permanently in these countries, I've got news for you. There is going to be changes of government and ruling parties within different nations around the world, as is the world of politics. And when you look at the next administration in the U.S. or the one following, it doesn't matter who it is, there is going to be change. And when that happens, there are going to be floods and floods of lawsuits that are filed against the United States government, against the state governments, against corrections, against law enforcement, and so many others, that it is going to be just the cost of incarceration is going to seem like pennies compared to these civil rights and other lawsuits that are going to be won by these individuals if the U.S. ships their criminals to other nations when they are in fact actually U.S. citizens. It doesn't make sense in terms of long term, in terms of reducing recidivism, in terms of many other ways, and especially to take these individuals away from their families who are U.S. based, who are U.S. citizens. It's just wrong. It is, there's no compassion there. There's no empathy for these people as human beings. And yes, some criminals don't deserve the same level of protection, but at the same time, where do you draw that line? And in order to draw that line, you need to have policies, regulations, and laws that stipulate that everybody is afforded the same protections under the system, under the laws, and under the governance of a strong and prosperous democratic society that's called the United States of America. Now, keep in mind that, as I said, that will be something that is, I think, very vehemently challenged before even the first incarcerated individual is shipped to a country like Venezuela. But whether or not the U.S. public will find out and be told about it prior to any flights being sent in those directions that are flying American citizens out of the U.S. penal system into the Venezuelan correction system, we'll have to wait and see. But it is a scary thought when you consider the implications long term and the financial liabilities that this system is going to cause, not to mention just the human and the compassionate aspects of it. It is just it just blows my mind. I can't even believe that a developed nation is considering such a move. Now, as a journalist, I can tell you that I have had videos leaked to me from inside the walls of Central American prisons. I have had videos leaked where there have been riots. I have had videos leaked where there was an individual that was literally decapitated on camera and his head picked up with the machete that was used to decapitate him. They picked up the head on the end of this machete and paraded it around before dropping it in a bucket. Now, this is the kind of situation and the inhumane facilities and environments in which the Trump administration is looking to send U.S. citizens who have committed crimes. Totally out there, just off the charts in terms of the breach of human rights and U.S. constitutional rights. So again, it is a scary thought, but we'll have to keep a close eye on that and how that works. Now, in other news, of course, the big award shows have started up for the season and the Grammys took place. Whether or not you watched them, I'm sure you've heard some of the controversies going on about a certain individual and what she was wearing, or, as I should say, was not wearing. If you haven't heard about it, look it up. I'm not going to talk about it because I just don't like either one of the characters involved and not going to promote them. But again, check it out. It was, indecent at the very least, and the lightest of responses to that. In terms of where we stand in Canada, we have a looming election and leadership races heating up when it comes to the Canadian Liberals. We know that Mark Carney, the former head of the of the Bank of Canada, and also has dabbled his feet, so to speak, in the international finance world in the UK, leading their federal bank. So again, he is looking to move forward, and he could definitely be be generating some interest and returning some of the lost Liberal supporters under Justin Trudeau. As they walked out the door, they may be coming back. With the trade tariff threats looming over Canada and the response thereof, people have actually started to calm down on their anger towards the Liberal Party against Justin Trudeau. They are now focused on unity of a nation and how we handle the United States in these tumultuous times of Donald Trump. So again, the whole thing that Musk and Trump really seemed to, and I could be wrong, but it really seemed that they were pushing for a win by the Conservative Party of Canada. They were thrilled at the lead and the numbers when it came to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada. However, given the whole change in Canada's focus with the threat of tariffs, it seems that support for the Conservative Party, that transition of former Liberal supporters going to support Pierre Poilievre and his party has really simmered, and there's been a change in the direction of the polling, and it actually shows that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are losing great ground when it comes to the potential of or even the assurance that there will be a federal election coming up later this year. But again, we have to watch and see how this Liberal race heats up for the leadership of the party, and in turn who will be the temporary leader of Canada when Trudeau steps down and the new leader of the Liberal Party takes their place. So we'll watch and see how that transpires and what that's going to mean for Canada moving forward. I think that a lot of Canadians are concerned with the Pierre Poilievre Conservative Party in terms of ensuring that Canada's sovereignty is respected and it is and that it is enforced against the U.S. and other nations when it comes to the transnational repression and the foreign interference inquiry and that commission. I think that has also played a role in the slowing of the exodus of people going from the Liberals and the NDP heading over to the Conservative Party. Again, that seems to be a reversing trend now, and people are flocking away from the Conservative Party given the current geopolitical climate around the world. So again, we gotta watch and see what happens there with the leadership race for the Liberal Party, and then we'll be able to watch and see what happens when the political race heats up for the next election. And again, the foreign interference inquiry, the Commission has filed their final report. If you haven't read it, it is thousands of pages long. I've been going through it myself in great detail. But again, there is also just a summary section so you can catch on some of the highlights and the more important points of it, as well as recommendations. But yeah, check it out. Excuse me, folks. I do recommend checking out at least the highlights of it as a Canadian so you can understand exactly what this entails, because I think that too many Canadians are not aware of the gravity of foreign interference and transnational repression within the Canadian borders and our Canadian electoral system. So again, I do encourage everybody to do a bit of homework on that before the federal election. Excuse me, folks. Sorry about that. And so that is where we are at. It's now 3:56 a.m. in Vancouver. Again, it is cold out there, and but it is beautiful with all the snow. Do we have anybody online from Vancouver or British Columbia or Canada? If not, then don't worry. By all means, share and post up there in the comment section where you're watching the show from, where you're joining from. And of course, if you have any comments or topics that you would like to discuss, you're welcome to put those up there as well. We are always open to any discussions as long as they are respectful of everyone else in the community that's online. So again, we are looking to have you join the conversation. So again, post up in the comment section, and at the very least, yeah, just let us know where you're logging in from. We love to know where in the world we are talking to people. It is a small world when you're online, but a big world when you're traveling it. I have been to Europe. I've been to, well, as many of you know, I've covered a lot of news stories, including the war in Ukraine. I've been over there covering the front lines. I've covered the refugee crisis in Poland. I've been there. So, yeah, I've been to many different international destinations, and I encourage you to travel and enjoy the world because you learn a lot from different cultures, from different ways of life. The world is a beautiful place, and it's a shame when people don't get out there and enjoy it. So yeah, if you have traveled places, I'd love to know where your favorite place or destination to, whether it's vacation, whether it's a business trip or anything. Yeah, by all means, share your favorite destination with us and why you love those destinations. There's a lot of different destinations that I enjoy. Mexico, I love just the relaxed atmosphere, of course the heat coming from Canada. I love to take that break in the winter to go down to Mexico and enjoy the heat. I haven't done it for many years, but I do feel a trip coming up into that region. One of the places that I have not been that I would really like to go and check out would be Cuba. Again, I would like to check out Cuba to look at the historic architecture there, the customs, the people. Excuse me, yeah, there's so many reasons why I'd like to check out Cuba, and of course looking at the way that they have kept cars running from the 50s and the 60s, you know, the old classics that are still working there, that they, through the magic of Cuban ingenuity, keep these engines running somehow of these classic cars. So yeah, I'd love to go to Cuba and check out, as I said, the history, the architecture, the culture, and of course the old cars. That's definitely a benefit there. So yeah, welcome Susan to the conversation. Patricia, get her done, Canada, welcome. Little man, John 48, John Reynolds, everybody, welcome to the conversation again. Feel free to share where you're logging in from. It's always cool to know where people are located. We were just chatting about different locations in the world that people like to go to, so by all means feel free to share your favorite tourism destination or business location that you like to travel to, and you know why you like that area. If you want to share, by all means just throw it up in the comments section. Other than that, earlier in the episode we talked about the fact that Musk, through his DOGE and accessing the Treasury Department of the United States databases, has actually also accessed information about Canadians and others around the world through tax treaty programs and other conventions, other shared databases between countries, which is against the laws of the U.S., the laws of Canada, the laws of other nations that have tax treaties with the U.S. So again, if you missed that part of the show, you can always watch when it's posted in a few hours on the various platforms, including here on TikTok. You can watch and it will replay the full episode, and you can learn about how the threat of Elon Musk and the DOGE is expanding outside the walls of the United States of America, and how it could potentially impact millions of people around the globe. Also keep in mind that if you have ever traveled to the United States, whether it is as a visitor or if you have been down there for business or other purposes, any information that was retained or taken into the system through customs, immigration, and any other agency, that now has been breached, and yeah, it's wide open to those of DOGE who are accessing the U.S. databases against U.S. law. So if you are a foreigner who has been in the U.S. or has any income or investments through the U.S. in which you've filed W-8 forms, if you are an investor in various stocks and different markets, of course your information may be compromised, ranging from social security numbers to other personal information. If you are a company doing business in the U.S. or through the U.S., then of course you have or should be very concerned about what information has now been compromised and breached by the DOGE group. and Elon Musk what that information is doing in terms of circulation and whether or not it's being utilized to train AI systems and other uses of the data sets. Yeah, it is a big concern of the international community right now. If you have spent time in the U.S., a taxpayer, whatever the case is, there's a lot of different treaties and conventions that have been breached by allowing the citizens of the U.S. that are a party to DOGE access to that information, breaches U.S. agreements, breaches international agreements, international treaties, and conventions. So it is the way it is, and we need to keep an eye on it. Once again, the RCMP and the Canadian Security Intelligence Agency have received complaints about the fact that DOGE, Elon Musk, and others have been able to breach the data of Canadian citizens and other foreign citizens through proxy of the US Treasury Department computer databases and all other databases relating to the federal government of the United States of America. Yeah, it is a big deal. People don't realize how big of a deal it is, but we're talking millions of people around the world may have had their data breached by the U.S. Treasury, by the U.S. Customs and Immigration, and so forth. So yeah, we'll be keeping a close eye on that, as well as other lawsuits that are being filed in the U.S., class action suits, and then potential lawsuits filed in other jurisdictions around the world. But again, yeah, we'll touch base on that more in future episodes. But yeah, if you have business dealings in the U.S., if you have U.S. investments, if you have U.S. W-8 tax treaty forms or numbers, then yeah, you should be concerned that your information has now been breached by Elon Musk and his team. And for those of you just joining, one of his team members is actually reportedly a Canadian, according to a Wired article. And he is a Canadian 19-year-old high school graduate that did a summer internship with one of Elon Musk's companies. And to show how serious of a concern you should have with the U.S. breach of information, with them having access to information on Canadians, this one individual is 19 years old, recent high school graduate, and he goes by the name of Big Balls. And this is one of the software people that is now in, that now has access to the U.S. Treasury Department main computer databases and the information of people in Canada, people in Europe, people in Australia. I mean, it is far-reaching. It goes way beyond the borders of the United States, this data breach that has been that's been going on with President Trump's new administration and Elon Musk and DOGE. So again, big concern there. I think that it's been overlooked for the most part in the international community. People haven't really put two and two together and realized that, as I said, through DOGE and Musk having access to the U.S. Treasury Department computers, databases, as well as those of Customs and Immigration, they now have access to the private information of citizens from around the world. Yeah, just a really big concern that they have access to all of your personal data, even if you're not American. Think about that for a bit, as well as your corporate information and other details, including trade secrets in some cases. So again, it should be a big concern to the international community. Once again, folks, you've been watching another episode of Live Chat with James here at ProPix TV in Vancouver, British Columbia. Feel free to reach out either through the comments section. You can watch this full episode as it replays on YouTube, here on TikTok, and other social media platforms and streaming platforms. We will be back again tomorrow night at approximately 2:30 a.m. As most of you know, I do host the TV show Perspectives for Satellite TV every night at 1 a.m. And that is because my co-host is in London, England. So being here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, him in London, England, it definitely is a fun chore of making sure that our schedules line up. And that is, I guess, I pulled the short straw because I get to do the show at 1 a.m. my time. Angus over in London is 9 a.m. his time. We get the show done and recorded, and then it comes out later in the day on the Savage TV network as well as their streaming platform. So feel free to check that out. But again, I will be back tomorrow night between 2:30 and 3 a.m. for another live chat. Feel free to join me then, and also feel free to throw your comments up in the comment sections. I do read them both live as well as when I am looking at the replay on, for example, YouTube. I do look at the comments that are added after on the replays, so by all means, if you have subject ideas or topics that you would like to talk about on the show, just put them in there, or just join live and throw them up in the live comment section, because I pay close attention to that. And many times we just go off on different topics that are of interest to you, as you are just as much a part of the show as I am. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Live Chat with James. Once again, I'm coming to you from the ProPix TV studios here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Take care, everyone, and stay safe.